Welcome to Backstage with Richard Ridge. One of the most eagerly awaited new films is Jonathan Larson's Tick, Tick, Boom, which stars Andrew Garfield as Larson. It is directed by Hamilton creator Lin-Manuel Miranda, and please welcome my guest, the film's screenwriter, Tony Award winner, Stephen Levenson.
Hey, I'm so happy to be here.
Stephen, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing very well.
Perfect. I want to tell you, the film is absolutely sensational.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so happy to hear that.
You know, when were you first aware of Jonathan's musical, and why did you connect to it so?
I was actually in a former life, in college, I was in a production of Tick, Tick, Boom that two friends and I put on. I forget, one of my friends was just really excited about the show and said, well, why don't we do like a little production in an upstairs space of the student theater? So I've known about the show since at least then, basically. Rent was, as for so many people, Rent was for me a transformative event in my life. It was a show I saw as a teenager, and just utterly transformed my relationship to theater and my desire to be a part of theater. It was the thing that made me go, I think I want to do this in some capacity. And so Tick, Tick, Boom was an extension of that, and always felt to me like it deserved more recognition than it had, and deserved more visibility, because first of all, the score is absolutely incredible. And second of all, the story to me was always so compelling, of this young person who's not so young anymore, who's looking at his life and wondering, do I keep going? Do I keep trying to do this thing that everyone is telling me to stop doing? The whole universe is screaming at me that this is never going to happen. Do I persist in this dream, or do I give into reality and take the easy road? And that to me is, that's a struggle we all face daily for some of us. So I loved this story from the first time I heard it.
You know, I'm sure that's what has connected you and Lynn, because you're all creators and you always think, oh my God, is this the only project I'm going to write? Is anyone ever going to look at this project? I'm sure that goes through your mind all the time.
Absolutely. And the thing that I love more than anything about Tick, Tick, Boom is that, most stories of artists are stories of triumphs. They're about, there are obstacles along the way, but in the end, this incredible achievement is reached. And Tick, Tick, Boom is the story of a failure. It's the story of a heartbreak. It's the story of Superbia, which is this musical that Jonathan worked on for 8 years that ultimately really went nowhere. It just never happened. It never came together. And to me, that's kind of the truest story you can tell about an artist. If you read any biography of an artist, I think what you're struck by, or what I'm certainly struck by, are all the projects that never happen. Yeah. All of the things that get started and left behind and never work out. And that's part of the process too. That's part of what it is. And it really was only out of that catastrophe of Superbia not working, I think, that John was able to realize that what he really wanted to do was tell stories that were closer to his heart, and stories that were closer to the world that was happening around him in 1990s New York. And ultimately Rent came out of that.
Yeah. Well, would you talk a little bit about the process of how you and Lin-Manuel Miranda researched how you wanted to tell the story in the film? Because this is fascinating. Yeah. You go into the library, like, what did you guys do?
Yeah. Well, so we went to the Library of Congress with Jennifer Tepper, who's an amazing theater historian and knows everything about Jonathan Larson, and had been to the archives many times. And so was kind of our guide through the archives at the Library of Congress, and Jonathan's papers. And basically, there is no definitive Tick, Tick, Boom script. It was a rock monologue that he performed in his life. It was called Boho Days at one point. It was called Tick, Tick, Boom at another. And it was never formally produced ever. There were some self-productions of it. And so there were a number of just disparate drafts there, with small and large changes between them, and no dates. There was no sense of which had come first and which came after. So we really just took all of those drafts, made copies of them, and then came home, and I just read them and reread them and tried to pick out the thread of what really felt like it was essential to the story, what felt like, oh, I kind of see why that went away. And also to look a lot at the score and what were the songs, and most of the songs stayed the same, but there were certain songs that came in and out, and that was really fascinating. And then the other thing was looking at Superbia, which was this musical that really was difficult to figure out what the draft of, because there were so many drafts over 8 years, you can imagine, and it changed drastically over that time. And so it's trying to figure out, well, what version of that are we going to have in our film? But it was really fun, like detective work, and putting that all together, and then figuring out, well, how are we going to expand this into a film? How are we going to make this cinematic? And how are we going to tell a 2-hour story and not a 55-minute story?
Yeah, because you also like laid out the songs on a whiteboard, didn't you?
That's right. Yes, that was something we did. That was one of the first things we did, is we put out all the songs on note cards, and the same as you would do with any kind of like a jukebox musical. It's like, this is our score. How are we going to make this work? And we had the skeleton of the story that John left. But it's such a powerful score. Like any great score, it tells a story all on its own.
Yeah.
You can track the thread of it. So it was really figuring out, well, how are we going to get all of these songs in? And then there were more songs we wanted to get in, and how are we going to get those in? And it was a lot. The joy of it was, oh my God, we have this incredible score by Jonathan Larson. How can we get all of this music in there in the most compelling way possible?
See, I just love this, because this is not just the musical of Tick, Tick, Boom. This is the story of Jonathan Larson's life that you're telling in the film.
Absolutely. And it Jonathan's version of it was autobiographical for sure. But he didn't have the perspective that we have, of course. He was telling his story as it was happening. And we get to look back, and the things that I think weren't particularly interesting to Jonathan because they were just his life, in hindsight, I'm certainly fascinated by. I want to know the minutia of Jonathan Larson's life. So we got to really dig into that stuff and add the things that he didn't necessarily think were significant. And to add, it was really important to us, something that came out in everyone we talked to. A lot of the research was talking to his friends and his collaborators, of which there are many. And the thing that came through in everyone we spoke to was, there was a certain extravagance about Jonathan, always, of an extravagance of spirit and a generosity. And he always threw huge, lavish parties for his friends, even though he had no money. Everything had to have a sense of occasion. There were always tablecloths. That was a big thing. Like, there was never just a dinner party. There had to be a tablecloth. There had to be candles. We wanted to get that feeling across as much as we could, that this was someone who lived life to the fullest and in a big way, and whatever money he had, he spent, and whatever time he had, he gave to his friends. And that was something that wasn't necessarily part of his version of his story, because I don't think he could see that about himself, but we certainly could, and that was really exciting for us.
See, that's what I loved about it. It's almost like he knew subconsciously that he had a short amount of time here to do what he wanted to achieve.
He did have this, it's sort of like, well, we didn't come up with the title Tick, Tick, Boom. You know what I mean? Even though it seems like, in hindsight, that's what you would call it. Like he was obsessed with the idea of running out of time. He was obsessed with the idea of wondering whether he would have enough time to accomplish all that he wanted to. And it is hard not to think that he did have some sense on some level that his time was finite. And sometimes, though, the way I think about it is that he knew what we all know, which is that all of our time is finite. And whether you get 35 years or 85 years, that time is precious. And that was something that clearly, I don't want to say haunted him, because I think it also energized him.
Interesting. Collaborations are really special. Talk about your collaboration with Lin-Manuel on this project.
Well, working with Lin was a dream come true from the very beginning. And Lin has so much in common with Jonathan, and not just in the superficial ways that they're both, geniuses who have reshaped musical theater. But they're both that sense of extravagance and that sense of exuberance. That is Lin to a T. Lin is just filled with passion and enthusiasm and love. And that's what guides him. That is the North Star for him, is what do I love? What am I passionate about? And so the process was filled with joy because of that. It was just following what we loved and what we were excited about, what we wanted to see. And it never felt like a chore, and it always felt incredibly meaningful and Lynn also has a real sense of impossibility. There were things that we talked about at the very beginning of this process. These sequences in his head and in my head that I thought, well, eventually we're going to have to cut those down. They're not really going to let us do that. And Lynn, they happen. Like Lynn figures out a way to make it happen, and Lynn sticks to that vision. And there's a tenacity there, but also an incredible graciousness. And I think when we came back from COVID, we shot 10 days and then we took many months off, and it wasn't clear what was going to happen with the film. When we came back, it was obviously a very different world. But because of Lynn, I think, and his spirit and his enthusiasm, there was such a cohesiveness among the crew and the cast, and such a feeling of we're in this together and we're doing this incredibly important thing. And there was not a single positive COVID case the entire production for us, which was remarkable, and just a testament to the fact that everybody was so determined to make this work and to be there for each other. And that was really powerful.
Okay. One of the most amazing casts ever in a film. I mean, I sat there in the room. We were all hyperventilating when we saw all these theater alumni. I'm not giving anything away. But
yes.
So many special treats in this movie.
Absolutely. But again, yes, that's Lynn. Lynn is just like, that's what I want to see. Oh. Lynn talks about how he was one of the people in high school, I think, at the Ziegfeld Theater at midnight for the opening of the Chicago film. Yeah. And like that, and he talks about seeing Chita Rivera when she came on the screen and the theater going nuts. And like, he wants that experience for all of us. And so again, that was another thing where Lynn said, we're going to get this person and this person and this person. And I said, okay, I'm sure we'll start there and let's see where we go. And, partly because it's Lynn and people are desperate to work with him. Like, we got those people. And, it was just, the theater nerd in me was geeking out, every second of working on this film.
We had goosebumps watching this film from the second it began till the second. This is a story for everybody, though. This is not just for theater people, but theater people will this will blow their minds.
Absolutely. Well, I feel like these things have to be, it's sort of like a medical drama. If you do ER, if doctors watch that and don't feel like it's real, it's not going to be real. And it's sort of like this has to feel, to the people in this community, in this world, it has to feel authentic. And hopefully if it does, then people that don't know anything about it will also feel that authenticity and that love, even if they don't necessarily, get every single reference.
Okay, Andrew Garfield. I know he also loved this musical. This is a big pet project for him.
Yes.
When you knew that he was connected to this, when you were writing or fixing the screenplay, did you have Andrew's thoughts in mind? Like, he's so brilliant. I knew Jonathan, and yet you look at Andrew, and I'm like, oh my God, it's not Andrew Garfield anymore. It's
Jonathan. It was remarkable. And one of the great things also of working with Lynn is that, from the beginning, he said, I don't really know how to make a movie, but I know how to make a musical. And this is how you do it. And we did workshops. We did, I think, 3 or 4 week-long workshops, just like you would do a Broadway musical. And so I got to work really closely with Andrew and all the other actors in crafting these scenes and crafting these arcs, which did then I got to go home with their voices in my head as I was rewriting. And Andrew was just a marvel from the very beginning. But the thing was, like, in the very first reading, it was sort of like, Andrew Garfield's going to do this. That's amazing. But he doesn't sing. That was the thing. He doesn't sing. He's not a singer. Maybe he can carry a tune, was sort of what he said about himself, and then to watch as over a year, he not only emerged as a singer, but like a world-class vocalist was just amazing. He just, I knew that he was an amazing actor. I knew all of that, but I don't think he knew that he was this insane singer. And that was such a cool thing to watch unfold.
There is nothing Andrew Garfield cannot do.
Apparently not. Yes, no, I'm a total believer.
I cannot wait for him to come to Broadway in a Broadway musical.
I know. Yes, I know. Well, I feel like that's the next challenge. It's like, I think it is a little bit like a drug. And it's like, once you've done it, I don't know if you can go back.
Yeah. I'm sure there were so many magical days on the set for you. Would you share one with our Broadway World audience, like maybe one of the filming days when you were like, this was absolutely like incredible, besides all of them?
Well, I will say the day, and it was before COVID, we were shooting in Central Park. And we just did that whole day of things in Central Park. It's from John's monologue of him running through Central Park and going to the Delacorte Theater and finding a piano there and playing. And it was really early on. I want to say it was our second or third day of shooting. And Andrew sang live. He sang most of the takes were him singing live. And getting to be there in the Delacorte Theater, empty, at night, watching Andrew Garfield sing this haunting, incredible song that I think sums up so much of how we all feel about making art or being part of art, which is, you know, what a way to spend a day, is this refrain. That was incredibly special. And that felt like, oh my God, how lucky are we to be here watching this and being a part of this?
You know, it's interesting because there are so many beautiful, like, New York City, like, oh my God, the Delacorte Theater, you know, the diners downtown.
Yeah.
Also an homage to that time period in New York City when you could still be a bohemian. Well, you know, I got here in like 1978. I came to New York, 77.
Oh, wow.
And it was such a free time. You made enough money to survive and live in an apartment and create art.
Yeah.
It was so wonderful to sit and say, oh my gosh, I remember that time.
I know that was a real joy, was to get to recreate a New York that frankly I didn't know, or I know so much of what my imagination of New York is from seeing Rent as a kid and being like, well, that's New York and that's what but getting to recreate that world. And our production designer, Alex DiGirlando, who also I worked with on Fosse Verdon, is just, I mean, he's just insane.
Yeah.
And he built this world with such care and authenticity, and getting to recreate Times Square from 1990, like all of that was so fun.
Yeah.
And getting to revisit this world that frankly, as you said, doesn't really exist anymore. Not in the same way, at least.
It all looks so real to me, and I remember this stuff so vividly. And I'm like, I don't
know, that's great.
That, but I'm like, whatever world that is, I want to live in it.
I know. Yes.
Well, you know, we have a few more minutes left. You know, we have so many theater fans, you know, watching here at Broadway World. You talked about Fosse Verdon. I knew Gwen really well. I didn't know Fosse very well, but I knew Gwen Verdon really, really well.
Amazing.
That was so special for me to watch that whole entire show, because I saw my husband Preston, and he'd be like, Richard, who's that? I'm like, that's so-and-so, that's so-and-so. That's Neil Simon's wife, Joan. This is
right.
So I mean, down to the little detail. Favorite memory of working on Fosse Verdon for you was what?
Boy, there were many.
Yeah.
I think of our first day of shooting, I have to say, where it was, we were shooting Mallorca. We were shooting Long Island for Mallorca. It was October 31st in Long Island. It was freezing cold. The first scene that we shot was about how hot it was in Mallorca, and we were shooting on the beach. But I just remember Michelle Williams coming out for the first time, me seeing her for the first time in the costume, in character, and just wondering, where did Michelle go, and how did Gwen Verdon get on set? And it was just, and then Sam was in the next scene, and it was like, well, where did Sam go? And that was when I knew, oh my goodness, we have something incredibly special here. I just couldn't believe the commitment and the transparency of those performances. They just dissolved into these people. And it was such a joy.
Brilliant, that whole series you did.
Oh, thank you so much,
my friend. But now, Dear Evan Hansen, wonderful, the film. Favorite moment of like adapting your Tony Award winning book from the show into the screenplay?
Oh, it was, that was another really fun and exciting process. I mean, I think probably the most fun part of it, because it was different and brand new and felt like, was getting to work with Amanda Stenberg in creating that new song that she sings in the film, Anonymous Ones, with Benj and Justin, which I only got to be involved with tangentially, but essentially, Zooming in the pandemic, talking as Benj and Justin and I have done many times of what is the song, how's it going to work, and getting to add a new voice to that conversation was really exciting and really energizing and just different. It was really cool.
One of my final questions is, how excited are you to be writing the new screenplay for the remake of Fiddler on the Roof with director Tommy Kail?
I mean, I couldn't be more excited. Speaking of Fosse Verdon, you know, Tommy is just amazing. I love working with Tommy. And again, all of these, I think that the common thread with all of these projects is just our love for these stories and this material and these worlds. And Fiddler on the Roof is no exception, where it's just, I love this story so much. It means so much to me. It means so much to Tommy. And it's just, I feel like a kid in a toy store getting to revisit this world and getting to reimagine it. And also trying to be very, very careful to preserve everything about it that's amazing and that we all love.
Well, that was the first Broadway show that I saw. I remember everything about that Saturday afternoon, seeing Harry Goss as Tevye at the Majestic Theater.
Oh my God.
I can vividly bring that back.
Yeah.
When I saw that you were connected to this, I was like, oh my God, Stephen Levenson is perfect for this.
Oh, thank you.
Perfect. So my final question is, what do you hope audiences walk away with after seeing Tick, Tick, Boom?
You know, I hope they feel what I feel in watching the film and in hearing the story, which is inspired to make something of their own, and to create something of their own, and to follow their dreams. As cheesy as that sounds, it's a cliche for a reason. And the fact that you know, something that is really remarkable to me is that the character, or the real person that the character of Susan is based on, Janet Charleston, who was John's on again, off again girlfriend. We met her in the course of making this film, and she's still dancing. She's still dancing every day. She's living in the same apartment she was living in all those years ago in the East Village. She's still doing it, and that to me is, I don't know. I found that so inspiring. That, you know, this is a story of those moments where it does feel like quitting, and it does feel like it would be easier to give in, and it's so remarkable to me that people don't, you know, and I hope that it gives people some of that inspiration as well.
I think it will, no matter what field they're in, or just as human beings, it gives you that you walk out of that film and you feel, oh my God, I want to achieve certain things in my life. It moves you forward down that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Well, like I said, Tick, Tick, Boom will be released on November 12th in theaters and begin streaming on Netflix on November 19th. Stephen, thank you for dropping by and chatting with me today.
Oh, thank you. This was such a pleasure, as always.
Hello. Hi. Welcome. I'm Jonathan Larson. I am 29 years old. I work at the Moondance Diner. Check. 1 sec. Do we take reservations? No, we do not take. We're a diner. I have an original rock musical.
Hey, boy genius.
That I have spent the last 8 years of my life writing.
He's getting out. You're gonna be rich and famous.
And rewriting.
Did you crack it yet?
Oh, I'm getting so close. And rewriting.
Can I hear it?
Any day now. 8 years! And the time keeps ticking. Tick, tick.
You need to ask, are you letting yourself be led by fear or by love?
Fear! 100% fear.
I don't know what the show is.
Why do we play with fire?
What if the workshop happens and nothing changes? What then, Jonathan?
Maybe I'm just wasting my time.
Do you know how many Jonathan Larsons there are? 1.
Why should we blaze a trail? There's not enough time. I went to 3 friends' funerals last year, and nobody is doing enough. I'm not doing enough.
Try writing about what you know.
What does it take to wake up a generation?
It would be a tragedy to give up what you have.
Take off and fly. Fear or love, baby, don't say the answer. Actions speak louder